Today, what I want to present is what was prepared with regard to Iran. So, which way to Persia, options for new American strategy towards Iran. What is this? This is a 2009 Brookings Institution paper. Now, someone in the comments, they mentioned read protocols of the elders of Zion, of the learned elders of Zion. I would not advise you to utilize such texts as it only discredits your claims. Let's utilize that which is official from governments as opposed to that which may have been discredited by academia. And even though when you read the protocols of the elders of Zion, it's similar to the confessions of a British spy written in the Ottoman times. I would advise people to actually read documents and strategic plans that have been formulated by government officials. So in this case scenario, this 2009 Brookings Institution paper lays out a US strategy menu for Iran. Everything from diplomacy to full-scale military strikes. Now, the paper is titled Which Path to Persia? It explores how Washington might engage pressure or even topple the Iranian regime. It's not a policy, it's a playbook mapping out the risks, rewards and realities of each option. Now, some people, they say, a lot of your detractors keep saying you brush Iran's crimes under the carpet and don't place enough emphasis on them. The simple response to that is that our war, our long-term war of attrition is with Israel. We are enemies of the Zionist entity. We are at war with the Zionist entity as a Muslim Ummah. Within the Muslim Ummah, we have schism and schismatics amongst us. There is, of course, dissension, disagreement amongst many nations. And within those nations, there is discord. We do not align ourselves with any side when it comes to the common objective, which is the dismantling of the enemy state. Currently, as we speak, it's essential on all the Muslims to unite to dismantle the Zionist entity. So now this paper has in total nine. It explores 9 options for the American government. There are diplomatic means, military means, regime change, and containment. So remember, as we speak, many Arabs have been contained. Arabs have been contained as a whole in terms of their teeth have been removed, so they cannot perform jihad in the way of Allah. Their borders have been blocked, so mujahideen cannot enter certain countries. When it is desirable for the globalists to have fighters enter any country, those borders are opened up. But when it is undesirable, borders are closed. So the Arabs have been contained largely, as we see now, as we observe that people cannot enter Gaza because of the regime of Abdul Fattah al-Sisi and the King of Jordan. And those Arab countries that surround Gaza, they will not permit for any mujahideen to enter Palestine or occupied Palestine in order to carry out their obligations. So that is containment. But the strategic goals were laid out with 9 potential meaning it's a playbook that gives 9 potential case scenarios. The diplomatic would be persuading Iran with an offer. Now, so many people are confused with regard to the politics of Donald Trump. But what they do not realize is that strategy and strategic goal plans are written prior for presidents. So we have diplomatic means like persuading Iran with an offer or engaging diplomatically with Iran. So persuading Iran with an offer or engaging diplomatically with Iran. This is 2 options which fall under diplomacy. Then you have the military options. Now, listen very carefully with regard to the military options. The military options is that a US ground invasion, also US airstrikes, also, which is number 5, leave it to Bibi, meaning leave it to Benjamin Netanyahu, allowing or encouraging an Israeli military strike. This is option number 5. Then we have regime change, which is options 6, 7, and 8. For instance, option number 6 is supporting a popular uprising. Option number 7, supporting Iranian minority and opposition groups. And option number 8, supporting a military move against the regime. And option number 9 is containment. And that is what has been happening since 1979. Ever since 1979 and the Iranian Revolution, Iran has faced containment, sanctions. Iran has been fighting a war of attrition against its enemies ever since 1979. Like many other states, like North Korea, for instance, and other states, what they refer to as rogue states, and later were referred to as states which are a part of the axis of evil. Now, as we observe these 9 options, currently as we speak, leave it to Bibi is being carried out. So currently it's left to Bibi. Bibi is Benjamin Netanyahu, allowing or encouraging an Israeli military strike. That is what has occurred. But what is left on the table for now is supporting a popular uprising, and Bibi attempted to encourage the Iranian people to carry out an uprising, or supporting Iranian minority and opposition groups, or supporting a military move against the regime. From within, of course, Bibi has attempted, meaning Netanyahu, has attempted to encourage that and incite that within Iran. But in the past few days, what we have observed is that Iran has united as a nation, and the opposite effect is actually happening. And we have observed that Tel Aviv is being obliterated. The defense shields are down, what they refer to as the Iron Dome. The Iron Dome is not functioning. It's committing suicide. In fact, the missiles are falling onto Tel Aviv. Their own missiles are falling on to Tel Aviv. There is the malfunctioning of the Iron Dome, as well as the Jews in Israel fighting amongst themselves for shelters. So those who are entering bomb shelters, many of them are not permitting fellow Jews to enter the bomb shelters. They are barring fellow citizens as well as the slaves that they keep in. Remember, the UAE and what they refer to as Israel are very similar in that regard. They keep a slave population. So the slaves that they keep in that country, they do not allow them to enter the bomb shelters. They even assault Hindus who attempt to join their worship. So there are Hindus who are attempting to unite with the Zionist entity, but the Zionist Jews are not so fond of the Hindu people because they are, of course, a racist group. There is a racist occupation. So this paper, which is known as Which Way to Persia and Options for a New American Strategy Towards Iran, what is mentioned in this paper is that the paper intentionally does not pander to typical tropes of political diplomacy or bureaucracy in presenting its proposals. What it mentions, in fact, is the central purpose of this monograph is to try to present the most important policy opinions available to the United States to craft a new strategy toward Iran, and to do so in a dispassionate, objective fashion. So what they write is, we have attempted to portray each option in its naked glory without the gloss of advocacy. Each of us believes that some of the options are better than the others, but we all recognize that none are perfect and all have more risks and costs than guaranteed benefits. Now that makes sense, that why they would go, why Donald Trump is fumbling, why Donald Trump is unable to stick with one policy, because he has clearly the policy makers at the top, those who control finance, are actually the policy makers. Even in this country of the UK, when we vote in the Labour or Conservative, those parties are only voted in for how the budget should be spent. So they will differ on the budget, how much will be placed towards the council and how much will be placed towards potholes on the road and how much will be placed in this. The two parties may differ on this, but the actual people who control policy, the policy makers, are a part of the deep state. Those people who write the policy are making that policy for Donald Trump. So within those 9 options, Donald Trump is moving between those various options. And what this paper concedes is that there is no consensus on approaches to what they refer to as the Iran problem. What is referred to as Iran problem. Now, why Iran is a problem for them, and not only Iran, there are possibly other states that pose a problem, is that for Israel to dominate the region, it cannot have Arab states or a Persian state within close proximity that can deter Israel from its plans to expand, or its plans to take more land grabbing, or to exterminate different peoples of that region. So Iran poses a problem. And what they state, nor is there a unified attitude amongst the American population. The American public have to be convinced of the chosen approach, or at least taught to tolerate it. So what is made very clear is that the American people must be made to tolerate the option that Donald Trump will make in the coming days, as well as accepting or being convinced of the approach that the United States of America will take. So that is where the role of propaganda is important, that we must understand that the role of propaganda is that the news channels, they carry out a blockage of news. So as we see now that Iran is successful, and remember, what they refer to as Israel has never engaged with a state proper, with a real military, for more than 50 years. since it engaged with Syria and Egypt in 1973. The Palestinians have been contained, and the IDF, their terrorist soldiers, have only ever been killing and sniping young children until Hamas developed its capabilities post 2005. So after the first Intifada in 1987 and throughout the 1990s, Hamas did not develop its capabilities. Much of its capabilities were developed due to the enhanced presence of Iranian militias in the region. And that is what people need to understand. Today, Hamas is able to develop its projectiles, its rocket launchers, make its own weapons, because of the intelligence that was passed through Damascus and the chain of supply from Iran into Syria, passing into the Lebanon. That is how the Palestinian groups developed their resistance capabilities. That is very important for people to understand. Even in the 1990s and the early 2000s, Shaykh Ahmad Yassin, he would visit Damascus during that time, meeting many of the ulama in Damascus in the early 2000s and in the late 1990s. So, when Iran is referred to as a problem in the region, it is because of its positioning towards what is referred to as Israel and the Jewish supremacy. So this Jewish supremacy intends to take land as it has done in southern Syria, and it intends to expand. So what is mentioned in the paper is one of the many failings of the current Iran debate is that proponents of different perspectives are often arguing about apples and oranges, comparing policies meant to achieve very different goals, as if they were meant to achieve the same ends, or starting from assumptions as if everyone were in complete agreement about these assumptions. So the fact is that there is no complete consensus on policy. Part of the problem is that there is no national consensus, and one of President Obama's tasks, remember this paper was formulated during the presidency of Obama. Tasks in forging a new strategy toward Iran will be to build such a consensus, or at least achieve a national tolerance for his preferred course. There is no national tolerance. As we speak, the United States of America, the people of the United States of America, they have no tolerance of war. So there is no tolerance of war, and there is no national consensus. In fact, the American public is sick and tired of war. Ever since the invasion of Afghanistan in 2001, late 2001, and then the invasion of Iraq in 2003, and of course the result of that was chaotic. It led to national debt. As we speak, the United States of America has over 30 trillion in debt, around 36 trillion in debt, and the UK has over 2 trillion in debt, and the debt grows, and then taxes increase, and the taxpayers' money is being utilized in the black budget to fund war and kill people abroad, all for the sake of Jewish supremacism. This is what people need to understand. That Western capability, Western weapons are being utilized to keep afloat Jewish supremacism in the region. This is what Nigel Farage, the far right, will not tell you. All those supporters of Nigel Farage in the UK, listen, that you in your policies are supporting Jewish supremacism through Western weapons, weapons that are made by the RAF, by British arms. Those weapons are then utilized in the Middle East and other regions, not to contain Muslims, but to make a Jewish supremacism that deems itself more supreme to the Goyim, the non-Jew, and follows the teaching of the Talmud, which contains Jewish supremacism. So, what is mentioned in this paper also with regard to the Israeli attacks is that, in short, America forecasted a high probability that Israel would eventually strike Iran, but never consolidated whether it would create opportunity or risk for America in the region. So there's something that needs to be assessed. They knew that Netanyahu, remember Netanyahu has a Rebbe who passed away in New York, New York being the capital of Jewish supremacist finance in the world today. This Rebbe supported a messianic worldview, which is adopted by Benjamin Netanyahu. Only recently, the president or the prime minister of Argentina, the leader of Argentina, he visited. Now, he's supposedly Roman Catholic, but he visited Netanyahu on the 10th of June, and he presented a picture of the Rebbe to Netanyahu. Why? Because the current leader of Argentina is a devotee of the same messianic Rebbe that Netanyahu is a devotee, and they both have an apocalyptic worldview which believes that Israel must launch a major war in the region to exterminate its enemies and establish a super Jewish state in the region that expands from the Euphrates to the River Nile. This is why there is meddling of the Zionist presence in the Euphrates. There is meddling of the Zionist presence within the Middle East of the Euphrates River. So, what this paper states, in short, there is considerable, but remember that what the paper states is that, does this create opportunity or risk for America in the region? What we have to realize, and what the Americans must realize, those Americans who listen to this and others, is that this will actually create risk for the United States of America. They must not underestimate the capabilities, the confidence, the resilience of the Iranian people, the Persian people, as a nation and a civilization. So it will actually create risk for United States of America personnel, and this is why Starmer needs to realize that he is only risking sons of the British Isles by sending them to the Middle East to their deaths. So, what the paper states, in short, there is considerable reason to believe that under the right or wrong set of circumstances, Israel would launch an attack, and that has happened. Principally airstrikes, but possibly backed by special forces operations. Now, Netanyahu has admitted that there has been American help in their strikes to destroy Iran's nuclear program. That has not happened as of yet. It has not happened. This could create either an opportunity for or a threat to American interests with regard to Iran and the broader Middle East. It could constitute an opportunity and thus a possible policy option if the United States would like to see Iran's nuclear program destroyed, but prefers not to do it itself. It could be a threat if the United States believes that an Israeli attack would destabilize the region and would not advance or would harm American interests in relation to Iran. I would state here that it would actually destabilize the region. This would destabilize the region. So the Israeli strikes on Iran have destabilized the region. Remember, if there is nuclear fallout in Iran, and remember, Benjamin Netanyahu is a psychopath. If this satanic psychopath decided to bomb the nuclear facilities, there could be a potential nuclear leak in that region, which could spread to the UAE and Saudi Arabia, which the British embassy is warning its citizens within Saudi Arabia today and within the UAE to leave in case of the possibility of a nuclear leak. So these psychopaths do not have limits in what they target. So what is mentioned with so much uncertainty in its strategic risk assessment, why would America pursue this option? This is the critical question. That if there is possible risk, why would the United States of America follow such a policy? In this case, an added element could be that the United States would encourage and perhaps even assist the Israelis in conducting the strikes themselves, in the expectation that both international criticism and Iranian retaliation, so Iranian retaliation, would be deflected away from the United States and onto Israel. So currently, as we speak, the policymakers, they understand this. So they allow and permit Netanyahu. Sometimes it seems that Netanyahu is the second fiddle, and sometimes it seems Trump is the second fiddle. But as we stand, if there is deep criticism of Israel's actions because of the growing conflict, then the United States of America could easily fall back to blaming the policy of Israel. The logic behind this approach is that allowing Israel to mount the airstrikes rather than the United States provides a way out of the dilemma described in the previous chapter, whereby American airstrikes against Iran could become self-defeating because they would undermine every other American initiative in the Middle East, an outcome exactly the opposite of what new Iran policy is meant to accomplish. So, for the time being, Donald Trump, he plays with the policy options. He has all these 9 options. This is why we have him fumbling from one policy to another. Now, in a best case scenario, this paper that we are studying, what did it imagine an Israeli airstrike on Iran would achieve? So that is a question. That this paper, which is Which Way to Persia, and of course many of you, I believe, would be looking for this paper now online. Unfortunately, there is someone asking the question saying, I purchased your book, Navigating the End of Time, and the language was too difficult and I returned the book. Unfortunately, my books are not difficult to understand. They are written in standard English. I speak standard English. And I would say that you need to increase your literacy if you find that level of writing as being too complicated. So, in a best case scenario, let's see what this paper envisaged. So, what all of this means is that realistically, an Israeli strike against Iran could consist of no more than 125 Israeli F-15 and F-16 sorties with limited weapons loads because of the distance, backed by a small number of cruise missile shots. This is not a meaningless force, and it likely could do a considerable amount of damage to the best known of Iran's facilities. That has not happened as of yet. And when at that time this policy was written, it was before the Syrian revolution. Currently, as we speak, Israeli jets are fueling in Syrian airspace. But again, it probably could not do as much damage as even the limited American airstrikes option discussed in the previous chapter. It probably would not even be able to cover all the targets listed. Moreover, the IAF would have virtually no capability to conduct opportunity strikes on targets revealed by Iranian actions during the attacks themselves. So the next part is worth paying attention to. Nor would it have much, if any, ability to follow up with the repeat strikes to hit facilities where the initial attack failed to destroy the target overall. An Israeli strike would be even less likely to meaningfully set back the Iranian nuclear program than would an American air campaign. So this is important. Towards the end, they liken an Israeli strike to an American air campaign. So utilizing the Israelis as a proxy to take out the nuclear facilities. And we know that if America does use its bombers that it has at its disposal that can take out the Earth's crust and reach the basement of the nuclear programs, there is always the possibility of a leak, a nuclear leak in the region. And that's a catastrophe for everyone in the region. But it could also lead to Iran keeping everyone hijacked at the Strait of Hormuz, as well as striking military bases in the region. Remember, all the Arab countries are compromised. Here, what were America's options? What were America's options? So, firstly, they divide this into three parts. They have the green light, they have the yellow light, and the red light. So, the green light, the first option, is for the United States to give Israel a green light, permitting Israel to transit American-controlled airspace over Iraq. Now remember, the airspace over Iraq does not only belong to the Americans. The Americans also have the airspace over Jordan and Syria, currently as we speak. So, the United States would coordinate with Israel beforehand on how to manage the consequences of an attack, including Iranian retaliation and the regional and international political fallout. So as we speak, logistically, America supports the Israeli attack by giving airspace, and in recent news, the Americans have brought their ships closer to the Mediterranean, into the Mediterranean or other parts of that region, in order to counter Iranian ballistic missiles. So the yellow light option, the second option, is for the United States to give Israel a yellow light, encouraging Israel to mount the attack, but not permit it to use Iraqi airspace. That has not happened. So currently, as we speak, the green light option is occurring. The virtues of this scenario would be the same as with the green light, with the added benefit that the diplomatic fallout for the United States might be mitigated, since it could claim it had no advance warning, or that it did and even tried to prevent the attack by closing off Iraq's airspace. The drawback to this option is that many, especially Iran, might still believe that the United States was complicit in the operation, thus making US troops in the region vulnerable to retaliatory strikes by Iran. Now, this second option is not the option that was actually carried out. The option that was carried out is the green light. So the green light option has been carried out, yet Iran has not attacked United States of America troops because Iran is not there to provoke war. Iran has not provoked this war. So if America has direct involvement in terms of utilizing American weapons and American troops. The third option, which is a red light, a third option would be for the United States to give Israel a red light, actively discouraging an Israeli attack, either because Washington had decided that it could carry out the attack more effectively and with fewer political complications on its own, or because it determines that the likely costs of a military attack by either the United States or Israel outweigh the potential benefits. The rationale for saying no will determine the pluses and minuses of the red light option. Now, this explains to us why the President of the United States, Donald Trump, he states different things at different times. So at one point he may seem as if he is taking the red light, sometimes the yellow light, and now currently the green light. He switches his options because this is what the policymakers are presenting to him. So let's analyze the following. What is America and Israel's failures when studied in light of this paper in this current war? Number one, America had only anticipated to adopt a singular policy in a linear fashion from the 9 proposals. It hadn't considered the possibility of being compelled to consider multiple approaches and an expedited turnaround. That means that America had 9 options, but they only actually, from those options, they only expected to carry out one option. Currently, as we speak, Donald Trump keeps fumbling because he shifts from all these options, from one option to another. Number 2, mixed messaging from Trump suggests he either genuinely had no prior knowledge of the imminence of the Israeli attack, or B, had knowledge and gave the red light, but was entirely ignored by Bibi, thus undermining, perhaps forever, his posturing as a political hard man, placing the entirety of Western diplomacy and foreign policy at critical crossroads. Or third option, gave the green light according to some news outlets, but had hopes that he would quickly be able to leverage an isolated strike to get Iran to the negotiating table. I think it's the third option. He thought that they will carry out the strike and then he will be able to bring Iran to the negotiating table. So this tells us that no one actually has control of anything. None of the governments actually, so this would knock down conspiracy theorists who believe people actually control every event. What October 7th and the current Iranian strikes have demonstrated is that there is no oligarchy that actually controls everything in the world, and that the IDF is not an invincible army. Mossad does not have cutting edge technology, as David Icke would want us to believe. He believes they have cutting edge technology, and therefore October the 7th is a conspiracy. What has happened is that IDF and Mossad have shown that they do not have cutting edge technology. They can be overthrown. In fact, they could be overthrown within the next 10 days if the Muslims had a willingness and the ability, meaning if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them the ability to do so, that if Iran continuously striked Tel Aviv, within the next 10 days, masses of Muslims could enter into occupied Palestine and take the land back. If the king of tomatoes, Malikul Bandura, King of Jordan opened up his borders, if the Syrian regime, the current Syrian government, allowed people to enter across the border, if Lebanon opened up its borders, if Turkey opened up its borders, and of course, if Sisi opened up his borders, then what would happen? Thousands would enter into Al-Masjid al-Aqsa, and Al-Masjid al-Aqsa would be free within the next 10 days. But currently, as we speak, those governments are contained. Those borders have been contained, but the Iron Dome is down. So then we observe some additional policy changes. One of them, Trump announced that he gave the green light to the US attacks on Iran whilst withholding the final order. This disturbs every chronology that forecasted potential US intervention in Iran, causing a fallout amongst US officials and hasty and irrational emergency policy in the face of a rapidly failing Trump popularity campaign. So as we speak, Trump, his popularity has fallen as the peacemaking president. He's confused in his policies. Remember the hawks behind the scenes. There are many Americans who are from the neocon cloth, who have been cut from the neocon cloth. Trump is being pulled from every side, and he attempts to take control of the situation, but in the long term, he has demonstrated that he actually has no control of the situation. Fourthly, the American population is disproportionately against US intervention in Iran. Trump intimated that an Iranian cell could potentially execute a terrorist attack on US soil, which is of course false. American bases could be targeted and American lives lost, but it did not elicit the hoped reaction from the American public. Building public tolerance was a critical first step before military intervention. So that was not done. Why? Because events are moving too quick. In previous times, events would take time. You would hear about an event every so often, but in the current times that we live in, we have events every day. Every day. This is the Ashratu Sa'a, like a necklace of pearls. You cut off the string, the pearls fall consecutively, one after the other. That is the time that we live in. So there are a few additional points. Both US and Israel massively underestimated Iranian military capability and national resolve. So the Iranian military was underestimated, as we have observed in the rocket strikes in the past few days. They have destabilized what is referred to as Israel, to the point that the Jewish supremacist state has jailed people for more than 2 years for making videos of the destruction. This is why not many videos are appearing that demonstrate the destruction that is occurring in Tel Aviv. Many of the Jewish people, settlers, illegal settlers, all of them are illegal, they are going to the coast to take boats, paying thousands of dollars to take boats to Cyprus. Flights are not leaving Tel Aviv. They are not leaving what is referred to as Israel. A last-ditch attempt at trying to execute a lighter approach alongside Israeli airstrikes, i.e., calling upon the Iranian population to overthrow their regime. Iran has always had its own conception of a Persianized modernity. So this answers the question, why were they unable to overthrow Iran from within? Because Iran has always had its concept of a Persianized modernity. It has never pined for the importation of American modernity and culture. Unlike the Arabs, you go to Morocco, they love their McDonald's. You go to Qatar, they think McDonald's is like a high-end restaurant. Like even in Pakistan, there are some people from the upper classes, in economically upper classes, that they think going to McDonald's is like eating from a good restaurant. When here in England, it's the working class that goes to McDonald's for a cheap meal. $5.99 burger meals and all this cheap food. But unfortunately, in the Middle East, you have lines and lines of people lining up for McDonald's as if McDonald's is some excellent French cuisine. That is the type of modernity that Arabs and Pakistanis and Indians and Indonesians and Malaysians have fallen for. But the Persians, they have their own concept of modernity. It's a Persianized modernity. So this issue transcends Shia Sunni. It also goes into cultural values. It has never, what is mentioned, it has never pined for the importation of American modernity and culture, unlike some of its regional neighbors. The Iranian public, religious and otherwise, have all shown solidarity in this war. So the solidarity must be shown by all Muslims. And unfortunately, there are people, even in when they go to Mecca al-Mukarramah and al-Madinah al-Munawwarah, there are so many people, what they do is they buy from McDonald's. We Muslims from Britain, remember many times I'm referring to British or Anglosphere Muslims, people who speak the English language, I'm addressing you, that we should boycott these Western corporations whenever we go out to Umrah.